is here. So, hi, glad you're all here. So let's talk about why Web3 developers should care about design. And the first question I have for the panel is, so let's talk a little bit more about design and product principles as Web3 begins to mature. Sure. And yeah, go for it.
I can take the first one. So I think universal design, why should we design for inclusivity, and like who are we designing for? And again, why should engineers care about design? So universal design, it is a practice that defined by a group of not just designers from across different fields, but also researchers and engineers in 1997. And the principle was defined as that we should design for products or interactions, environments for all humans to the greatest extent with no additional adaptability. So how does that tie to Web3? We've actually come a long way since the Web3, this term was first coined by Gavin Wood, probably about like over 8 years ago. And in his Medium article, that he says why we need Web3, and he considered that as being the foundation of freedoms of individuals. And so, who are these individuals? And these people can be all kinds of different, doesn't matter their age, old or young, different backgrounds for culture, and different language that they use, and also whether they have disabilities or not. And here I kind of want to call out that disabilities, it shouldn't just be a physical, personal health problem, especially in we designing for a product. What that means is actually it's a mismatch between interactions between the users and their the environments that they were in it. And this is actually defined by World Health Organization also says this. Disability is not just a health problem. It is a complex phenomenon reflecting the interaction between features of a person's body and features of the society in which they live. So that's a little bit of like disability that I wanted to call out. But going back to the principles, if you Google universal design, you will find 7 principles out there. But today I wanted to talk about like just 2. And the first one would be equitable use. Being fair and impartial avoids stigmatizing and segregating users. And I wonder if you guys want to talk about anything about this, or?
Well, I'll diverge a bit and say like the design principles and bringing forward being human-centered and what we're working on. I think the evolution of Web3 is we've been deep in the infrastructure space. What can we accomplish in the innovation of the actual tech and the infrastructure? What undergirds what we take to users? And today we're reaching a space where we're leveling up from mainnet to layer 2s. We're interacting at that space. DApps are becoming common space. There's so much more available to us. We're able to move faster. And it's introducing this new problem, like what should we work on? When it's not obvious that we're just trying to figure out whether or not that we can make the tech work, it's whether or not it's worth working on. Will someone use this? Is this a problem anyone actually has? We're moving from asking whether or not we can build a solution to whether or not the solution has a problem. And I think we'll begin to see an opportunity to actually find problems and build solutions for it. When you're coming from Web 2 space to Web 3, we've got frameworks and things that abstract all the complexity of the infrastructure away to a point where today you get a group of web devs together and they can just build a solution to a problem like that because the tools are there. And I think we're quickly approaching that point in Web3. And this is when we begin to see the need for skill sets like product design, user experience design, and product management.
I'll keep this short because I think that was actually pretty well covered there. I would only add to that, plus one, that 100%. I would only add to that let's see, in 2018 basically, if you've looked at sort of the evolution of the space, right? Like as the space has grown, we've started designing for kind of a broader and broader set of people. Whenever we first started, we were developers building for developers, right? I am my own user, therefore I don't have to do as much research. I don't have to do as much design. I don't have to like prove out these concepts. In order for Web3 to deliver on the, I guess, the promise, right? Like we're all dreamers. We're all aspirationally building these things that we think are going to impact society in a positive way. That's what we thought Web 2 was going to be, and it kind of didn't deliver. That's what our hope is that Web 3 is going to deliver. In order for us to do that, we're going to have to be designing for everybody, not just ourselves, not just the people that we know or are in our, the one room over that we can do that. We have to design for everybody. So that's all I'll add to that.
I thought that was really well put. It makes me want to ask another question around like, what are some practical ways that developers can start to think more about the regular humans that they want to pull in? The cool people, as it were.
The ones that haven't installed MetaMask yet. So I would say to start, I mean, I think it's one of those things where if you are, how do you start achieving results at the gym? You start going every day. It's incremental. I'm a big believer in incrementalism. It's like really, I think it's tempting to look at like the product spaces or the products that like have it all together, like Gitcoin, like Artium, you guys are amazing, and think like, well, how do we do that? How do we get from like 0 to 1,000? And I would say that like first, just start thinking about involving designers earlier in the process. If you haven't hired designers, hire designers. If you haven't, I would start making time for a technical review, like actually like building design and research into your process, and understand that it's it's consistent effort applied towards a certain direction is kind of how I think about involving design and sort of those the way in which to involve everybody.
I actually want to engage in some user research right now because I feel like I'm talking to a black box, but there are humans in front of me. I would love like a quick like poll of the room. How many folks in here are developers, builders? Cool, cool. How many of you are designers? Product people? Rad. I'd like to introduce a concept that I think of as balanced team. This comes from a group of folks I used to work with, but I think it applies largely as we move into this DAO space, the idea being that we all bring a set of disciplines, and this room has a really nice, well-balanced team. As we bring product thinking, design, and engineers into the same room, amongst other disciplines that I think we'll start to discover what does a Web3 balanced team look like. I think it will involve community managers, folks who are deeply embedded in what's happening in the community. As we build up DAOs and you've got tens of thousands of community members who are influencing your roadmap in the direction of where you're going, how do we distill that? What does that look like? So I think bringing these teams together where we begin to deeply understand one another's practice. I like to talk about T-shaped people. I, as a product manager, think deeply about where does what we're building fit into the goals we're trying to achieve? What are the outcomes that we're aiming for? And what's standing in our way? What risk should I be buying down? As designers, you think deeply about who are the users, what are their problems, am I solving for them? And as developers and builders, you often think deeply about whether or not this is feasible, is it achievable, should I be doing that? And then being T-shaped is that I understand well enough what the disciplines on the other side of me do really well. So as I'm moving about in my efforts, I know when to pull in a designer. It's less about having a process and being rigid and more about understanding what we bring to the team collectively, so that you can lean into one another. As a dev, you can be like, okay, so I'm building the solution and this is what I understood, but then I bumped into a user. I was in a user interview. I was helping someone install our product. I was dog-fooding what we used, and I realized this doesn't solve the use case. And then you reach out to your design team or your designer on your team and say, like, I think we need to dig into this some more. You begin to lean into one another. It's less of this like rigid handoff between disciplines and more about understanding one another and coming together to build collectively.
I want to poke at something here for a moment. It sounds a bit like you were talking about like cross-discipline pairing. And I've experienced that, and I just wanted to say that it's really, truly magical when you're hanging out with an engineer or a PM, and I'm a designer, and they're like, oh, hey, did you think about this thing? And it saves me several hours of work, saves them several swears at me. Yeah, just +1. It's a solid move.
I actually know Emma's been doing this, so maybe you could talk a bit about like cross-discipline pairing in Web3.
Yeah, honestly, I think like Josh kind of bring out like sometimes when we are very easily just kind of design or like work in our own silos, and you're pondering like kind of guessing what the engineer's doing, how are they doing this thing, or like what is the objectives that the PMs are doing while you're designing things, for my case. So, and I found that just pairing with them, it literally saves hours. And also like, it's fun. We have fun together and kind of bullshit in the process, and we get to know each other better. So absolutely, we'll go on that.
Yeah, so we've got about 5 minutes left.
That's fast.
Yeah, this stuff really goes fast. So I guess the last question I'll have for each of you is just in a sentence or two, talk about why it matters to care about user experience.
I'll start. So I think user experience, because the one thing that we kind of been talking about, I think right now, like a lot of Web3 space, like people are kind of talking about like we're gonna be completely different from Web2. But I think what we actually need to do is like consider, because people are people. Human psychology doesn't really just change because we are in the era of Web3. So what we really should do is learn from what is not working, what's harming in the Web2 and avoid that. But also learn from what's actually working, what's tried and true. A lot of people put hours, years of practice into making the thing best for humans in general. So there's definitely things that we can learn and build upon and improve upon.
Can you repeat the question again? I got very into what Emma was talking about. Sorry.
I have to look back at my notes because I was doing the same thing.
Yes.
I believe I was asking in a sentence or two, talk about why people should care about a good user experience.
Why they should care? And I was like humans. That's why. And then I forgot the question. Yeah. I mean, I think I just huge +1 to what Emma shared. And I think the other piece is we're reaching a stage where if adoption becomes real, we have to abstract the complexity away from the user. I don't know how many of you got to attend Andrew Yang's talk earlier today, but just like the inspiration of realizing like the real impact of what we're building. Like we're past the, like I'm like keep coming back to this, we're past the point of just building infrastructure to the point of like delivering impact to the people and the communities and our like human infrastructure that we desire. And to do that, we've got to abstract away the complexity of the technology, and user experience design does that. It begins to understand what's the user behavior and how do we make this a graceful introduction for anyone, where installing a MetaMask wallet isn't painful. You don't have to read developer docs to use the product, right? Like it's making that motion towards mass adoption and making it inclusive for anyone who wants to come in and use the tools and products.
I'm going to swing. I think I started the talk on the aspirational. I'm going to swing it all the way back over to pragmatic. Why do you care about design? It's existential to your projects. We like what we've seen, like at least 4 funds raise $1 billion plus. Massive amount of capital is going to be deployed. Web2 is waking up. They're entering the space. They employ massive design teams. They are already thinking in this direction, and it's going to be important for us, in order to stay competitive in this space, in order to continue to shape the future, we're going to have to continue to design for those people, right? So design, in my opinion, provides 2 different things, right? It provides, it de-risks current design decisions, so it's going to save your dev team time. You're not going to spend 6 months building something that may not fit the right use case or be quite right. It also provides asymmetric insights, right? So if you and 5 other products are building the same thing and only one of you talks to your users, you're going to have ideas and you're going to have kind of like strategic understanding of those problems in a way that the other competitors don't. So those are kind of like I'm going to just say, it totally saves you money. Hiring a designer saves you money.
Yeah. So any other closing comments?
Yeah, actually, I think right now one thing that I want to call out is that I think right now in where we are in Web3 right now is the things are made by the people, but it's not really for the people yet, especially for people who doesn't really understand Web3 yet. So that's how do we make things that's for the people, and that is by working with engineers and have a balanced team, really.
I also just wanted to say, in regards to Andrew Yang's talk, I got to tell him a dad joke right beforehand, and that's how you get him to stop smiling. I didn't know if anyone knew, but now you do. We have a couple minutes left. Are there any questions from the audience?